The story begins quietly at Jess's home, where she is calming her son Tommy after a bad dream. Tommy is autistic, and Jess always tries to keep him safe and comfortable. After soothing him, Jess reminds Tommy to hurry up, then steps outside to pick up laundry hanging on the line. As she cleans up the mess Tommy made earlier, the doorbell suddenly rings. Jess rushes to see who it is but finds no one there. She asks her neighbor Jack, who's working in his yard, if he saw anyone ringing her doorbell. Jack says he didn't see anyone. Later, Jess begins packing her belongings. Nervously, she puts her things into the trunk of her car and drives away. Tommy, still distressed, starts having a panic attack. Jess tries to reassure him, saying she cleaned everything and that everything is just the way it was before. But Tommy doesn't want to see her and remains upset. Feeling overwhelmed, Jess accepts an invitation from her friend Greg to go sailing on his boat. A little later, she joins Greg on his boat called Triangle. Also on board are a couple named Sally and Downey, along with Heather. Sally explains that she brought her friend Heather along. Greg, however, seems a bit tense and tells Downey he didn't want anyone else coming. Downey assures Greg that Heather is a nice girl, and Sally introduces Heather to Greg. As the boat sets sail, Greg spots Jess coming aboard. He quickly approaches her, noticing she looks tense. Jess hugs him and tells him she's just tired but ready to enjoy the day. Greg introduces Jess to his other friends, and they all start sailing together. Victor, one of the crew, is in charge of steering, and everything seems to be going smoothly. Suddenly, Jess feels sleepy. She drifts into a dream where she's lying on a beach, touched by the seawater. She wakes up startled. Heather asks if she's okay, and Jess inquires about Greg. Heather reassures her that Greg is fine and upstairs, and that Jess has been sleeping for a couple of hours. Heather explains that bad dreams can help relieve stress and offers Jess some champagne. Jess accepts and they chat while drinking. Meanwhile, Victor asks Downey to help him with something. Greg talks to Victor about an incident at the harbor. When Greg asked Jess if she was okay, Victor had responded no, which puzzled Greg. Greg then tells Victor that he heard Jess was bringing her son Tommy along. But when Greg asked Jess about him, she stared into space for 20 seconds and then said Tommy was at school, though it was Saturday and it was a holiday. Greg explains that Tommy attends a special school that's open every day, and he advises Victor to be kind to Jess. Greg declines Heather's offer of champagne, saying he's too tired. Jess says she didn't realize how exhausted she was either. Greg jokingly warns Jess that if she keeps apologizing, he might throw her overboard. He then teaches her how to steer the boat. Meanwhile, Heather tells Sally that Jess used to work as a waitress at a diner, where she met Greg and became friends. Sally comments that Jess's autistic son is her problem, not Greg's, and that she's been friends with Greg since high school. Sally also mentions that every year Jess brings a girl for Greg, but yesterday was different. Greg came specially to invite Jess sailing, and she doesn't remember it. As the wind begins to die down, Victor and Downey report that they're losing the breeze. Suddenly, the sea becomes eerily calm. Heather tells Jess that Sally wants to talk to her. Then, the wind stops completely, and their boat is stranded in the middle of the ocean. Downey notices an approaching electrical storm. Greg tries to radio the Coast Guard, but the communication is weak and wavering. Then they receive a strange, chilling message. A girl's voice calling for help, saying everyone else is dead. Before they can get more details, static takes over. The storm hits suddenly and fiercely. Greg orders everyone to put on life jackets and get down quickly. Victor and Greg struggle to control the boat. Greg instructs Victor to cut the main sail. The storm capsizes the boat, tossing everyone into the turbulent waters. Heather is swept away into the stormy sea. Sally calls out for Heather but can't find her. When the storm subsides, the survivors cling to the overturned boat, confused and scared about what to do next. Greg tells Jess not to worry, that they'll make it back, and Tommy will be safe at school. But then, a massive cruise ship appears in the distance. Hope flickers among the survivors. They think help has arrived. They hurriedly climb onto the ship, but Jess hesitates. When she steps on deck, she notices something strange. No one is there. No crew. No passengers. As they wander through the empty corridors of the ship, Jess begins to feel a strange sense of déjà vu. It's the same ship they just left, but now everything feels even more eerie. The ship's name is Iolus. As they explore, they find a set of car keys exactly like the ones Jess always carries. No one knows what it means. Heather suggests that maybe she has the keys, but Downey dismisses it. Victor checks the time on his watch, but it's different from the ship's clock. Jess's watch, however, shows the same time as the ship's. Suddenly, Jess spots someone hiding in a corner. She calls out, but Victor runs over to look. There's no one there. Instead, he keeps moving, searching. Jess tells Greg she's feeling overwhelmed and that Victor might be in danger. Greg dismisses her worries, saying he isn't concerned. Jess admits she's experiencing déjà vu again, feeling lost and guilty about Tommy. Then they hear a strange noise coming from one of the rooms. They go inside to investigate and find a room filled with mirrors. One mirror has a chilling message written in blood: "Go to the theater." They ignore it, dismissing it as a prank. But Jess warns them that the message is serious. Arguments break out. Jess feels she should split from Greg, who refuses to believe her. She moves alone into the ship's dark hallways and soon encounters Victor, who's bleeding and acting. Jess found herself on the chaotic deck of a ship, her heart pounding. She looked around and saw Greg lying shot, blood pooling around him. Sally and Downey, standing nearby, accused Jess of killing Greg. Jess quickly denied it, insisting she wasn't with Victor and that she didn't do anything wrong. Suddenly, gunshots erupted again. This time, Sally and Downey were caught in the crossfire. They were killed instantly. Jess, shaken and scared, gave chase. As she ran, she encountered a masked figure holding a shotgun. The figure's muffled voice spoke from behind the mask, but Jess couldn't understand it clearly. Before she could get closer, the masked person pushed her over the side of the ship into the dark ocean below. Just before falling, the figure whispered, "It's the only way to go home. To kill them all." Jess watched in horror as everyone around her appeared to be dead, sinking into the water. Confused and terrified, she looked around, not knowing who the masked attacker was or why this was happening. She found herself in a nearby cabin on the ship. Moments later, she heard shouting from outside the vessel. Curious and alarmed, Jess stepped out and looked over the edge. Her eyes widened in shock. She saw the ship overturned, with survivors clinging to it, calling for help. Stranded in the stormy sea, Jess's stomach twisted with fear. Suddenly it hit her. She was trapped in a strange loop. Every time everyone on the ship was killed, she woke up again, reliving the nightmare. As she explored, Jess found a small, old locket hanging from a grate. Inside were pictures of her son. When she looked further, she saw multiple identical lockets, evidence that this terrible cycle had happened before. In one version, she saw herself injured, calling for Sally. Jess pointed a gun at Sally, accusing her of the murder. Sally protested her innocence, insisting she wasn't crazy, that she hadn't killed anyone. Jess remembered seeing Greg dead in the theater, then the masked figure shooting again. In another version, Jess took a gun and grabbed Downey and Sally from the chaos, handing the weapon to Downey. She warned him to trust no one and to shoot anyone who came close, but she couldn't find Victor anywhere. The masked figure then removed its mask, revealing a familiar face. Jess, pretending to be present, led the masked person into a room and stabbed both of them with a knife. In the present, Jess called out to them and ran after a wounded Sally, who managed to escape the room. As she chased Sally, Jess found her in a part of the ship covered in dead Sallys. All around her were the lifeless bodies of multiple versions of Sally. She saw another Jess violently beating the masked Jess and throwing her into the ocean. Jess tried to tell the injured Sally to hold on, but Sally died. Jess realized that the triangle-shaped boat kept returning with survivors, except for her, each time everyone else had been killed. Feeling desperate and scared she might never see her son again, Jess decided to take control. She donned the mask and the clothes she had seen before, preparing for a final confrontation. In a tense showdown with herself, Jess ended up falling into the ocean once again. She woke on the shore, only to find herself back home that morning. She saw her past self, angry and yelling at Tommy, her son. Jess decided she couldn't let things stay this way. Without hesitation, she sneaked into her house and bludgeoned her past self with a hammer. Tommy saw everything. Jess quickly told him it was just a bad dream, trying to hide the truth. She packed her dead past self into a bag, took the locket, and put it around her neck. She stored the bag in her car trunk, then drove away with Tommy. She looked at her son and promised that things would be different. She would stop being angry, and she would protect him. As they drove along the ocean, a seagull suddenly crashed into the windshield, leaving a trail of blood. Jess pulled over, worried. She got out to retrieve the dead bird and threw it into the sea. But as she looked down the embankment, she froze. Instead of one dead seagull, she saw dozens, bloodied bodies of many dead birds pooled in the water. Her stomach clenched. She quickly threw the recent dead bird into the ocean and hurried back into the car, Tommy trembling in the back seat. Suddenly, Jess turned into the oncoming traffic lane. A semi-truck barreled toward her, and in a flash, she collided with it. The impact was devastating. Emergency responders rushed to the scene. Jess and Tommy lay motionless on the highway, lifeless. But then the scene shifted. Jess saw herself, another version, standing nearby, watching the wreckage and the bodies. A taxi driver, observing everything, approached her cautiously. He asked if she was okay. Jess looked at him, confused. She asked who he was. He simply said he was a driver. He told her there was nothing anyone could do to bring back her son. He offered to take her to the harbor. Jess hesitated, but then agreed. She told him she would come back, promising to return. She entered the harbor area where Victor was waiting behind her. Jess asked if he knew her, and Victor said Greg often talked about her, so he felt like he knew her. While walking, Victor asked why she hadn't brought Tommy with her. Jess paused, then told him that Tommy was in school. Just then, Greg saw Jess and approached her. They exchanged words. Jess felt an overwhelming sense of dread. She knew she was about to start the cycle all over again, trying to stop her son's death but doomed to repeat it endlessly. And so, the nightmare continued. An endless loop of tragedy, regret, and desperate hope to change the past, never quite escaping the dark cycle that haunted her. To continue with amazing stories, I recommend you click my recaps on the right, subscribe, and drop a like to return for future uploads. Grab your popcorn, enjoy yourself, and see you soon, my friend.